Good Friday to you. Just sounds great, doesn't it? Thank you so much for spending a little time out of it with us this evening. We do have a completely full half hour of programming for you tonight, talking about the weather, the changes that are coming, showers most definitely for the latter half of your weekend, and how thereafter 6 to 10 days of some cooler conditions. We'll go from the mid and upper 80s to low and mid 70s for much of your forecast, and looking ahead to graduation weather predictions for next Friday for a lot of folks who might be planning some activities before or after graduation. We'll get to that in much more detail in just a few moments. A lot of news to cover, a lot of other reports, but also in addition to our top headlines, we'll talk about a very nice gesture by a local department and how it was received and appreciated by someone from out of the Sayersville area. Baseball and softball scores. The district tournament starts Monday. Still some games left to try to squeeze in this weekend. We'll tell you where everyone is real quickly. Indictments in Johnson County. Sentencing, a murder sentencing in Johnson County. Also out of Johnson County, an update on former Mayor Bob Porter's case and his efforts to be released out of prison pending his appeal. That and a lot more to talk about. For all of you drone enthusiasts out there, of which I am one and know many, there's been a big development today. A Washington, D.C. court has struck down an FAA drone registration rule that's been in effect for the past several years. The court ruled that the FAA's 2015 Small Unmanned Aircraft Registration Rule violates the FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012. Under the rule, owners of drones weighing between a half a pound and 55 pounds, which basically covers them all, were required to register their aircraft with the FAA. Recreational drone hobbyist John Taylor was one who argued that drones qualify as model aircraft, which are protected from the FAA's regulations by the 2012 Act itself. And the appeals court has agreed with Mr. Taylor. As Circuit Judge Brett Kavanaugh wrote, Taylor does not think that the FAA has the statutory authority to issue the registration rule and require him to register, and Taylor is, in his opinion, right, the judge writes. The emphasis of the 2015 registration rule was on education and awareness for recreational drone pilots and giving the FAA an opportunity to work with those users to operate their unmanned aircraft safely. The agency rolled out a website for quick and easy registration, and more than 800,000 drones have been registered with a $5,000 application fee since that first day. Taylor has told reporters that he believes the enforcement and education for responsible drone use is indeed necessary, but the registration process as an educational tool for recreational drone users was ultimately bogus because it was just too simple and too quick to do any good in that manner. Well, here's not some good news. Growing IV drug use in Kentucky has put us on the forefront of a hepatitis C infection rate. Sharing syringes for heroin and other drugs has continued to push Kentucky up into the very top of the numbers. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention said that year before last in 2015, Kentucky was among about a half a dozen states where the rate of new hepatitis C cases was more than twice the national rate. West Virginia, Massachusetts, and Kentucky with the highest rates in the May 12 report. And an update released this year, just this past month, said Kentucky now has the highest rate of new hepatitis C infections in the entire nation from a period of 2008 to 2015. Montgomery County Sheriff's Department is actively at this hour, if you're catching the early show, and possibly the late for that matter, actively searching for some individuals in regards to an incident that took place on Littorals Fork last night. Only some limited details, but I know that it involved some sort of an altercation at a family's residence. One of the family members discharged a weapon several times in that structure, later at his structure as well, and then was following a female as she was trying to leave the area for her safety. He crashed into a utility pole, disabling his vehicle, left the scene, and there are arrest warrants, we know, in effect for at least one individual, if not others. Montgomery County Sheriff's Deputy Reggie Gosser and Sheriff Carson Montgomery were looking into the matter and hoping to execute some warrants just before I sat down before the program began. We hope to have an update for you on tomorrow night's program, especially for those living in that area. Indictments returned by a Johnson County grand jury, several for drug-related items, one for a man who has now been charged in 4 separate indictments for more or near at least $100,000 in back child support. The indictments returned against two for bail jumping, and that's in the first degree, which is a Class D felony and carries a penalty of 1 to 5 years and a fine of up to $10,000. Kenneth Meek of West Van Leer, as well as an Amber Brummett of 9th Street in Paintsville, both in separate cases, indicted on a count of bail jumping in the first degree for intentionally failing to appear at the time and place as ordered by the courts, both being ordered held on a $5,000 bond. Indicted on charges of possession of a controlled substance in the first degree, which is a Class D felony and carries 1 to 3 years by itself, but also endangering the welfare of a minor, possession of drug paraphernalia, resisting arrest, and possession of marijuana, is Jamie R. Booth of 6th Street in Paintsville. The grand jury charges that around March the 5th of this year, she was in possession of oxycodone, endangering the welfare of a minor in her control or custody. She also had containers on her person in which to store marijuana and other narcotics, and attempted to prevent police officers with the Paintsville Police Department from taking her into custody by threatening to use physical force against them. Joanna A. Palmer of Highland Avenue in Paintsville was indicted on account of assault in the third degree of a police officer, assault in the third degree, 2 counts of EMS personnel, as well as violation of an order of protection, criminal trespass in the first degree, resisting arrest, and being in a public place under the influence of alcohol. She reportedly went to and remained in the residence of a Timothy Palmer, and while authorities and EMS responded to the site, she assaulted police officer Zachary Mitchell, Thomas Rice of the Paintsville Fire Department, and Calvin Daniels, a paramedic with the Paintsville Fire Department. And she entered Timothy Palmer's residence in violation of a protection order not to. Therefore indicted as well with criminal trespass and resisting arrest for refusing to go peacefully with authorities, using physical force against them, and for being under the influence all at the same time. Dustin Smallwood of Nicholasville, Kentucky was indicted on account of possession of a controlled substance in the first, facing 1 to 3 years, and for resisting arrest. In December of last year, he was said to have been in the possession of methamphetamine as being arrested by authorities. He's being held, or ordered held rather, on a $5,000 bond. 2 people were indicted on 2 counts each of possession of a controlled substance in the first degree, complicity, and possession or use of drug paraphernalia, complicity. The felony counts 1 to 3 years each and up to a $10,000 fine. That's Leslie Whitaker and Carlos Dobson, who were said to have been in possession of heroin and methamphetamine. And 3 individuals were indicted with being in complicity with each other in trafficking in a controlled substance in the first degree of methamphetamine, possession of drug paraphernalia, and possession of a controlled substance in the second degree as well. Those 3 individuals identified as James F. Van Hoos, Brandy Nicole Nelson, and Robert Haney. Van Hoos and Nelson each ordered held on a $5,000 bond, but Haney was also indicted on a charge of being a persistent felony offender, and therefore he faces much more jail time, and was also ordered held on a $15,000 bond upon his arrest on the indictment warrant. And Vanessa Fairchild of Lucy Castle Hollow in River, Kentucky was indicted on account of custodial interference and faces 1 to 5 years as such, and ordered to be held on a $5,000 bond. And those indictments, of course, also included, as I reported to you on yesterday, those charges against Michael Hamilton, a former 911 dispatcher who is still under investigation but bonded out of jail after a years-long investigation by the Johnson County Sheriff's Department, as well as the Cyber Crimes Unit with the AG's office, determined that he was in possession of thousands and thousands of images on his phone, but specifically some depicting a minor in a sexual matter, and that he also used that electronic device to try to procure sex with that same minor. Also among those indictments without any mugshots included, Todd Miller of Marysville, Ohio, indicted on flagrant non-support, being in arrears to a female in the amount of more than $17,700. Kelly Kimbler of Flat Gap indicted on a count of flagrant non-support for being in arrears in child support for more than $11,000. Mark Stambo of Sitka, 4 separate indictment warrants, 4 separate females, to which he owes actually 3 separate females, and then the Ohio Children's Services Department, $20,600, $18,300, $28,600, $24,500 owed to each of those individuals or organizations, respectively, on behalf of Mark Stambaugh, indicted for 4 counts of flagrant non-support. And lastly, Robert Sammons of Paintsville, indicted on a count of fleeing or evading police in the first degree, that's a felony, carries up to 5 years in prison, as well as assault in the 4th degree for assault of a Cassandra Sammons. I'll be right back. To get high-speed internet on their state-of-the-art fiber optic network for all of your home and business solutions, or to watch TV without a contract on over 200 digital channels with superb quality, or stay connected with family and friends with 24/7 telephone service you can always depend on, contact Foothills Broadband today. Or just click on their link to the right to find out how they're working to provide the latest in communications at affordable prices with exceptional service at Foothills Broadband. 49 cars. Appeals court records indicate that Bob Porter's latest and possibly last effort to get out of prison on bail pending his appeal have been exhausted. As I reported to you back in March, U.S. District Judge Danny Reeves denied the former Paintsville mayor his request for bail, after which he sought an appeal of Reeves' decision through the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. And yesterday afternoon, a panel of judges with the Sixth Circuit agreed that Porter did not appear to be a flight risk or a public threat, but that Porter did, however, quote, fail to demonstrate that this appeal raises a substantial question of law or fact that is likely to result in a reversal of the decision, in which he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Also, that he has not overcome the presumption against release pending appeal, and therefore his motion for release is denied. Porter's release date there now still stands at September the 4th of 2020. He is serving time in the Federal Medical Center in Lexington on the remainder of his 4-year conviction. And a female from Martin County has learned her fate and will serve multiple life sentences behind bars without the possibility of parole. Amanda Bowen has been sentenced to 3 life sentences for the 3 lives that she and Jack Smith took, as well as 20 years to serve on 1 robbery count and 20 years to serve on another robbery count and 5 years for tampering with physical evidence. Jack Smith received as well 3 life sentences for his role without the possibility of parole after he pled guilty, avoiding the death penalty in regards to the murder of Tina Goebel, her 8-year-old granddaughter Trinity, and Goebel's friend Kanye Johnson. They were found in a burned-out home that belonged to Goebel back in August of 2014. They'd been stabbed and shot and the house set on fire. Bowen decided to go to trial instead of accepting a plea deal. She was found guilty just days ago and formally sentenced today to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Before we get back to local headlines, just a couple of announcements on tonight's community calendar, and I'm just going to read through both of those tonight. The Water into Wine Food Pantry has distribution days set for next week. That's Tuesday for Senior Day, 8:30 till noon, and their regular distribution day for everyone else, or those seniors who couldn't make it on Tuesday, of course. Wednesday, 8:30 till 3:30, with that hour for lunch and regrouping from 11:30 till 12:30. And a reminder, if you're picking up for someone else, you must have a note that is signed and dated and have that other person's card. They just simply have to make those requirements. The Fletcher reunion, by the way, has been set at the Ramey Memorial Park for not tomorrow, but a week after, Saturday the 27th, 1 o'clock. It's potluck. Bring a covered dish or dessert. They'll supply the pulled pork. You can contact Garlena Workman or Pansy Deaton if you have any questions about not this Saturday, but the following Fletcher reunion in the Ramey Park. I'll be right back. It was just nice to have a nice story tonight, and I think I even used that word a few more times in the following report. But any good news is sometimes few and far between. But a gesture on behalf of the Syersville Fire Department, which they make hundreds, I just was astounded. I knew they did it all the time, but I really didn't know how many times a year that they actually provided this service, or how many times folks like myself needed it. But nevertheless, they do. And when they offered this service to a gentleman traveling through Syersville just a few days ago, he repaid their kindness with a contribution as well as a nice handwritten letter, something that not everyone takes the time to do nowadays. In regards to them just unlocking his vehicle, as he had locked his keys in it while at a Syersville business just days ago. But tonight, this story serves as a reminder that there are good deeds that are still done out there and that appreciative people still take the time to show thanks for them. We're talking about the Sayersville Fire Department specifically. They answer hundreds and hundreds of calls every year, fire and EMS and emergency, all throughout Sayersville, throughout their coverage area, and throughout the county as well. Now, some of you might be surprised to know, but many of you won't be as well, that they also offer other services, including unlocking vehicles that, well, the forgetful owner, I'm guilty of it as much as anyone else, may have locked their keys in. Many of you won't be surprised to hear that because they unlock up to 400 a year. That's more than one a day, often many in one day. And if you've had that service done, you won't be surprised to know that they don't charge for it either. But for the rest of us who haven't had to use their services, it is surprising. And one man traveling through Sayersville just a few days ago was surprised to learn that himself.
On May 10th, got a call to unlock a vehicle at Sayersville Wendy's. It took me a few minutes to be able to make it out there, and once I got there, Mr. Childers was standing outside of his truck. We talked for a brief moment and then got into his vehicle, and after I got the vehicle unlocked, he asked me what the charge was, and I told him that there was no charge. It's a free service, but as a fire department, we do accept donations sometimes if someone wants to donate something to the fire department.
And Wes Childers of Versailles did, and he actually took the time once he got back, after driving his company vehicle, to out of his own pocket make a personal donation to the Sayersville Fire Department, accompanied by a very nice and lengthy handwritten letter signed to Captain Steve Reisner and the Sayersville Fire Department, detailing how he was so shocked when someone told him the fire department would be there to help him as soon as they could, and how Reisner was even apologetic that he couldn't get there any sooner than he did. He described Reisner and the Sayersville Department as being a definition of a great fireman and great department, in hopes that they would pass this message along not only to the chief but to the mayor and city council as well.
Chief Paul Howard opened the letter this morning when he came back into the office, and it's actually the first one we've ever had from anybody like that, giving us thanks and gratitude for helping people out, especially from people like him that's not from this area.
Yeah, that's what surprised me this morning when I opened it up, and with his donation that was included in the letter was very nice. That's the reason I contacted you to ask you to put it as a public service announcement. I really think that the fire department gets the short end of the stick, and by this, some people recognize that we do a good job.
So why do it for free, Paul? I mean, it's a lot of legwork, a lot of time. Sometimes it's not easy to crack.
Well, we do it for the citizens of Sayersville to give them an extra incentive for the tax dollars that they pay, besides our just big red trucks that we got running up and down the road. Some of the vehicles is very hard to get in. Some of them is difficult. So we've had one or two just absolutely won't let us in, that we just can't get in. But we get in 90%, 95% of all vehicles without any damage to them. We got some real good tools to get them into the vehicles with.
We have had instances where children's been locked up in cars, but we've been lucky that it's been like in the winter time, and we've been able to unlock the car before anything happened to the babies. We've also unlocked vehicles with animals inside that most of them are locked up usually at the gas pump or most of the time at the post office.
There are very few other places where that service is free. I really don't know of any others. And some places, of course, if you have to call a locksmith, it can cost $100 or more. It was also interesting to say, the saying that it comes in threes. They promise wholeheartedly that if they have, more often than not, one call in the morning, they'll have two more before they can even get back from that call of opening an unlocked vehicle or before the day's end. Happens way more often than not, they say. Well, what's been happening is the weather wreaking a little havoc on the end of the regular season, but here are scores and schedules for a few games that are left over the course of the weekend as district tournament action in the 57th and elsewhere starts for baseball and softball teams on Monday night. Well, I'll loosely say weather permitting and cover that in just a second in our last few words. But for the boys, they've been off, as I told you, and we're scheduled to play tonight at Powell County. And that game was canceled, I do believe, for the boys. No, actually, that game, as far as I know, is still on. My apologies. They are also set to be on the road tomorrow at noon at Pressenburg. And if they play both those games, those are the last games before they play in the district. The Hornets will play Paintsville on Tuesday night in Game 2 at 7:30. And remember, the 57th District Tournament this year is at Johnson Central, with McGoffin County at 12-5 for the boys, and also for Paintsville's boys. I'm looking, and actually this week's tally doesn't have their score. I'll get to that in a second, though. For the Lady Hornets, they were in action last night. Actually, their game last night was canceled Wednesday night, an 18-11 win over Breathitt County. Right now, the Lady Hornets are sitting at 9-10 on the season, but they've got a chance to go even on the season. They have on tomorrow a doubleheader. They've got Knott County Central at 11. They've got Pike Central at 1:30 tomorrow, so they're hoping to get to that 500 mark as they do. And the Lady Hornets play Game 2 Monday night against Sheldon Clark. The Eagles and Coach Sean Hall, a 21-4 rout over Belfry. That was on last night. They are set to be hosting Scott County tonight at 8. They are 26-7, and they are taking on Sheldon Clark's boys at home, of course, for the Eagles, as they're hosting the 57th District Tournament. But nevertheless, they're playing Sheldon Clark next week on Tuesday night, Game 1 at 5:30. Coach Pierce and the Lady Eagles, and a 14-2 win last night over Montgomery County on the road, puts them at 13-9 on the season, puts them about 6 or 7 rungs down in 15th region standings as far as that goes. They're also taking on Ashland Blazer tonight. That's a road game that was set for first pitch at 5:30, and then Raceland at 7:30. And if those two doubleheaders tonight take place, that will put them off the weekend and then facing Paintsville Game 1 Monday night. Paintsville and the Tigers and Coach Crace are 15-15 on the season, after a 3-2 win over Letcher County last night. They hosted Letcher County. Tomorrow, they're going to be taking on North Laurel and Somerset in a couple of makeup games, I believe, starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And the boys right now, as I said, from Paintsville, even at 15-15. And then they, as I've already covered, are playing in the 57th District against McGoffin County, Game 2 on Tuesday night. For the Tigers, while the Lady Tigers suffered a loss to Belfry 4-3 in favor of Belfry and the Lady Pirates. 23-11, though, for the Lady Tigers. They're second in 15th region standings, only behind Paintsville, who's 25-5. Now, right now, they've got a triple header set for tomorrow. That's what the schedule says. At home, East Ridge at 1, Harlan County at 11, East Ridge at 1:30, and Letcher Central at 4 o'clock. And as I mentioned earlier, they play Central Monday night in Game 1. For Lawrence County and the Bulldogs, a loss by 1 run to Letcher Central on Wednesday night of this week was their last game of the season. They'll wrap up the regular season 20-11, and they'll also be hosting, by the way, the 60th District Tournament, Belfry, Monday night at 6 o'clock. While the Lady Bulldogs played last night as well, an away game at Russell and a loss 3-4 by 1 run. They've dropped the last 5 games in the regular season, but that wraps up their regular season. They're off till Monday at the start of the 60th District Tournament. They are taking on Phelps at 6. Another 0 for the Cougars, this time against Estill County, who scored 17 runs last night. That was in 5 innings. And that will wrap up the regular season for the boys of Morgan County at 10-15. They also will be playing in the 62nd District this coming Monday night. They're hosting this year, and they'll take on East Carter in the first round. While the Lady Cougars, as I'm looking, wrong sheet. That's why it's not making sense. There we go. A 6-14 loss to Paintsville on Tuesday night of this week. I think that wraps up their regular season. They'll be playing West Carter 7:30 on Monday night in the 62nd District. The Lady Cougars finishing up the regular season and foregoing any makeup games over the weekend that I don't have at 8-18. And real quickly, before I run out of time, those showers and storms, some packing a punch, are moving in a northeasterly fashion, and we're hopeful they're not going to have a whole lot to say about our forecast for this evening, which does include a 30% chance of some showers. But those chances are winding down as this looks to go on to eastern Kentucky and the viewing areas north. Fingers crossed, but that's the way it looks. So for tonight, we're calling, per your Licking Valley RECC forecast from the National Weather Service, a low of 63, mostly cloudy, and a light south wind for your Saturday. Look for a 30% chance of showers and thunderstorms mainly after 3, but a little bit of patchy fog in the a.m. before, but otherwise partly sunny and definitely warm the last warm day of the bunch. Sunday looks much more cloudy, much more wet, 77 showers and storms, 58 for nighttime lows, and Sunday will be the start of a big change in which we'll see the 70s and a chance of showers throughout much of your next week and a run at that cooler air for the next 6 to 10 days, possibly thereafter. I barely have time to say this, but with all sincerity, thank you for tuning in and being a part of the program. Have a safe and wonderful weekend, and we hope to see you back here Monday for more of your news today. Good night.